This episode of World Wellness Education is made possible by a production grant from the Milhorn Law Firm.
We at the Milhorn Law Firm believe that important decisions in planning should not be put on hold. These planning decisions affect not only you, but your children and heirs. My name is Eric Milhorn. I'm one of 7 attorneys here at the Milhorn Law Firm. We've been very fortunate. We've been able to serve the Central Florida area for a period of over 20 years. All the attorneys at the Milhorn Law Firm live in this area and are proud to call this area our home.
The Milhorn Law Firm, the law firm you know and trust.
Hi, I'm Tracy Brosman, co-founder of World Wellness Education, a community forum to educate, encourage, and inspire a better way of life. We commonly face day-to-day challenges of stress, lack of exercise, and poor eating habits. But with the right approach, we can find freedom, wake up each morning feeling healthy, focused, and ready to take on the day. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time. Many of us know someone who has battled addiction. Maybe you are struggling with an addiction yourself. Nearly 1 in 8 people have some form of addiction to alcohol or drugs, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Food addictions are becoming even more common, with national obesity on the rise. Today, we will be talking with Simona Eladio about how she has recovered not only from alcohol and food addictions, but also from clinical depression and an anxiety disorder. Simona is here to share her story and explain what she learned throughout her journey. Welcome, Simona.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with where it began, with the clinical depression. How did you know that you were depressed, or were you always depressed in early childhood?
I pretty much have looked back at my pictures from when I was younger, and I can see a series of photographs, in my younger years where I was a sad child. The only pictures I have of myself when I was really happy and joyful when I was really younger, like 2 and 3. And then the pictures later on from then, I have this kind of fake smile on my face where I know that I was not truly happy and I was really sad. I was going through a lot as a child. My parents divorced when I was 4 and had a long custody battle for about 5 years over my sister and I. And then my mom remarried an abusive man and moved us half a country away from my father. So there were a lot of things at a young age that I was dealing with, but I didn't really become aware of the depression until I was much older, when I was in college and graduate school.
So you were having the feelings, but you didn't know what they were. You knew you weren't happy, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, and then what happened in college?
In college, I would go through periods of a couple of months where I would just get really sad, sleep a lot. When I went away to college, I had kind of had such a repressed childhood where I wasn't able to be like a normal child, participate in after-school activities and sleepovers and things like that. So I went away to college and I went the opposite direction, kind of rebelled and did everything that I wasn't allowed to do before. So I went extreme. I drank a lot, and that's kind of in our culture where it's just accepted and that's what you do when you go to college. But I wasn't aware even then that I was taking it to a level that wasn't considered normal and acceptable. It wasn't extreme. But like I said, I started experiencing months at a time of just sadness, and where I would go into drinking more than normal or sleeping more or not participating in activities more. I started talking to a therapist when I was in college. When I started feeling low for a couple of months, but mostly that interaction was just talking about my problems, and I didn't get any relief from the symptoms. They didn't seem to give me any solutions. They just listened and sat there.
So you were still sleeping a lot, still drinking a lot?
Right. And then I left, when I graduated school, I went to Arizona to live with my father for a year, and that's when I'd say I really hit a clinical depressive episode. It was about 8 months long, and it was a time period where I didn't have any friends out there. I didn't know anyone, and I really hit bottom with those feelings of loneliness and isolation. And I would basically sleep all day, go to work and waitress at night, come home, and that's where I kind of started dabbling in binging and overeating. I would eat and then kind of cry myself to sleep. And that continued for about an 8-month period. Wow. Until I was in a relationship at that point, and my partner said, I can't be in this relationship anymore. it's too painful for me to see you this way. And that inspired me to move back home to Massachusetts, where I had been accepted to graduate school.
Okay.
And that kind of lifted the load a little bit then. I got a little bit of joy back being in my community with my family and friends, and it lifted. I completed my master's degree, and it was during that time when I really was able to look back and see what had happened prior. You know, I was getting my master's in social work, so I took a lot of clinical counseling classes. And in those classes, I had to learn all the diagnoses, and I basically diagnosed myself. I would go through the manual and say, that's me, you know, anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress. And for me, it's not even, you know, the diagnoses that was important. It was just understanding a group of these symptoms looks like this, and this is how I can help myself coming from here forward. And in those classes as well, you know, we practiced on ourselves. We did group therapy together. We did one-on-one individual counseling together, and it was coming from our personal experience. So I was able to work through a lot of my childhood traumas in those classes, doing the therapy one-on-one with my fellow classmates. And in that program, I also encountered a form of therapy that really kind of changed my belief system. It was called SolutionFocused Therapy, and it was the first time I'd ever interacted in that kind of setting where we were looking at solutions instead of problems. The first question you ask a client in SolutionFocused Therapy is, if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and a miracle had happened, what would your life look like? And you explore.
Looking at it from a different perspective.
Right. You know,
So
if all your
important.
dreams came true tomorrow, what would that look like? And then they start to get excited and they talk about that, and then you start to look at how is that already happening in your life now, because it is. It's just sometimes we get so caught up in our mind in that negativity or that isolation or that depression takes such a big hold that we can't see that.
That we don't realize that it's happening now, even if it's a much smaller scale, that there's parts of our life that would be our dream life that are happening right at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, we always have strengths within us. You know, we just have to tap into those and build on those strengths.
Wonderful. Now, did that help with helping your binge eating or the alcohol abuse? Did
The
that
alcohol
type of
abuse,
therapy?
yeah, for the time that I was in graduate school, it was at, you know, a zero. I wasn't, because I was engaging myself spiritually. I was working through my emotional issues, my psychological issues. So my focus, you know, I had something to focus on instead of just being distracted by alcohol or food. When I graduated, I ended up moving down to Florida to take care of my younger siblings. I became their guardian. And at that point, I had to switch gears from doing social work to going back to waitressing, which is something that I had done all through college to support myself. And that environment, you know, a lot of times it's you work hard on the job and you go out and you reward yourself with a drink at the bar. And so I kind of got back into that lifestyle of drinking again. And finally one day, one of my friends woke me up and said, "What are you doing, you know?
Wow.
You're living your life one way during the day and another way at night." And so it forced me to look at that, and I ended up quitting drinking. And
were you able to quit cold turkey, or did you?
Pretty much. I mean, because then the energy flowed into a different area. You know, if I don't heal it in one way, it's going to shift into another form.
Okay.
So it took form in food at that point for me. And that kind of, you know, chemically has a lot to do with the sugar that's present in alcohol to the sugar that's present in food. So I was craving sugar from quitting drinking, and that's when I started binging on sweets.
Oh, you had a bad day.
Exactly.
Have a treat.
Yeah. So it was a natural thing to turn towards.
Now, when you say you were binge eating, what does that look like?
Well, the first episode that I had of it, really, that I have a strong memory of, was that summer when I quit drinking. It was probably about a month into it. A very stressful situation happened with my brothers that were living with me, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I literally took a gallon of ice cream out of the freezer, sat down, and just mechanically started eating the entire gallon of ice cream. My sister was there at that point in time, and she looked at me and said, "Simona, put the spoon down. You know, you're gonna finish the whole thing." And I couldn't. I was overcome with the emotion or with just the desire to remove that emotion from my awareness.
The more you ate, the less you had to focus on that.
Exactly. And like I said, it wasn't that often at that point in time, but it progressed. And that's what they talk about, you know, with the disease of food addictions and stuff, that it's a progressive disease, that it gets worse and worse over time if you don't deal with the root of the issue. And basically around that time, I found Bikram yoga. And that was another, that was basically my huge awakening. And Bikram yoga is regular hatha yoga. It's a physical asana practice, just like any other form of yoga, traditional hatha yoga. It's a physical practice. That just means, you know, you do the physical poses.
Right.
But this specific form of yoga is done in a room that's heated to 105 degrees with 40% humidity.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, but it's a very healing environment. It has the capacity for rapid change.
And why is that?
Well, basically, the heat creates an environment for detox.
Okay.
You know, it's very good on many levels for the body. Physically, it lubricates the joints, allows your muscles to be supple and easy to be flexible. You can get a lot deeper into certain postures, and every posture hits a certain organ in the body or system and creates a healing in that area. So the deeper you can go in those postures, the more change you can create. But in terms of the detox, obviously if you're in a heated room, you're sweating, you're flushing all the toxins, free radicals, any of the things in your body that's prohibiting growth and health, you know, you're removing those obstacles and allowing your body, your vessel, to be a pure vessel so that you can, you know, function better and fulfill your purpose.
So when you did this for the first time, what happened afterwards?
Well, the first class was not easy, I'll be honest. You know, I tried to leave the room 3 times, and we say in Bikram, your only goal for the first class is to stay in the room for all 90 minutes, even if you just lie on your back for 90 minutes straight, just to stay in the room for a lot of reasons. But one is it takes time for your body to adjust to that environment. And also it's a process of training the mind, which has a lot to do with the things that I've done in terms of healing, you know, letting go of old belief systems and retraining the mind and the body in the new, positive, healthy belief systems. So that's a part of it, but it was a struggle for me. I kind of rolled around on the floor. I was having a really hard time. You know, I didn't think I would make it. No, but as soon as I walked out that door and the fresh, cool air hit my face, it was the first time that I'd ever experienced a connection to something deeper than what I'd experienced before. I finally tapped into something bigger, my inner self, my true spirit. I got a glimpse of it, like this euphoric, joyous feeling, you know, when I walked out the door, and that's what brought me back. You know, no matter how much the struggle is, and I found that in a lot of my life, there is a point where we have to endure struggle to change, and we don't always have to. So through the yoga, I was able to start changing my life, because you're practicing like that, you can't keep drinking or eating or smoking or doing any of those negative habits anymore.
Was it cold turkey again, or?
With the food, no, definitely not. But it was like experience by experience. I would learn, you know, I would binge the night before I would go into class, and then I would suffer, and I would learn I don't want to do that to myself anymore. I don't want to torture myself in that way. So I couldn't do that if I was going to class the next day. And I basically, at that time, had also started attending Al-Anon meetings to deal with family members who were involved in drugs and alcohol. Al-Anon is a 12-step recovery program for people who are affected by family members, partners, etc., who have addiction issues. And by going to Al-Anon, I realized that I couldn't change or control the people in my life. The only person I could change was myself. Because up until that point, I was trying to change and control and micromanage other people. And really, I had to change myself. And then I had to look at, what do I have to start to change? And it started with the food. It was probably about 6 months into my yoga journey, I started to do a 60-day challenge, which means you go to the Bikram yoga class every single day for 60 days straight, no matter how you feel. Sad, happy, overeat, doesn't matter, you
Right.
go.
Now, I have to ask you before we go into that, what kept you going? You say that, there were times when you would go and you felt absolutely miserable because you had been binge eating. And so many of us would choose our negative habit or what we're used to, maybe not call it negative, but, rather than do change, we would choose to continue that binge eating than to do that exercise or the yoga. So what kept you there? Was it those euphoric feelings? Did you continue to have those?
Definitely, yes. And that grew more and more. The more I went, the easier it got. I was still struggling, I'd say, for about the first 6 months because I had a lot of self-change and improvement physically to do. I lost 25 pounds, within the first probably 6 months that I started practicing. And on me, that is a lot, but every time that I went in there, I was able to focus more. I was able to gain more peace. I would lie on the floor in Savasana, which is your resting posture, and I would feel this joy start to bubble up from within my chest like a fountain. It was just overwhelming, and I'd never felt that was the first time I ever felt happiness.
Wow.
Was in a yoga class.
That's incredible.
And I felt connected deep, deep, deep within me where I'd never felt before, like I said. And that sensation would start to carry for longer and longer. Maybe it might be just for a few minutes in class. Then it would be on my drive home all the way till when I got home. When I opened the door, all the stress and anxiety happened again. But the more I practiced, the more it became my reality instead of just my break when I went to yoga class.
That's awesome.
Because when I first started, a lot of it was in my mind. My thoughts, I was on a hamster wheel, like going nowhere fast. I had constant thoughts.
Well, we have over
nonstop.
50,000 thoughts a day, and most of those are repetitive thoughts.
Right. Yeah, and I was on this cycle of repetitive thoughts, a lot of worry, fear, anxiety, and that consumed all my energy. I had no energy. I was just always worried and stressed and anxious. And then I remember one day, about 6 months into my practice, probably about when I started the 60-day challenge, I was driving home and I just had this awareness, like, I'm not worrying right now, and it was this amazing feeling where my mind used to go spinning, 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 and there was just quiet and peace.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what was the 60-day challenge like?
It was intense as well. That's the path to rapid change. This is why it's recommended for everyone to try at least one to see what happens. But it basically shot me forward on my spiritual journey, and I was really forced to be really honest with myself, because things that I could hide before, practicing only 3 times a week, I couldn't when I was doing it every day. And that's when the food addiction really came out. My yoga teacher at that time, she said to me, you've been practicing every day and I haven't seen any change in you physically. And not that I needed to lose weight, but usually when you do a 60-day challenge, everything goes to its natural homeostasis, to its balance.
Right.
Your hormones, your body weight, everything. And nothing was shifting. And she said, do you know why that is? And I said, well, I ate a lot last night. And she said, well, how often do you do that? And I said, well, every night. And so at that point, she kind of offered me an alternative if I wanted to change, and that was Overeaters Anonymous. And that's where I kind of transitioned from Al-Anon to Overeaters Anonymous, from looking at others to looking at myself and being honest with myself and what was going on. And I started going to Overeaters Anonymous meetings. That's, again, another 12-step recovery program. It's based on the format of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I started doing that for about 6 months, and I just sat there in those meetings and listened, because at that point I didn't believe in God or a higher power, and the whole basis of it is finding a higher power and what that means for you. So it took me a long time to wrap my brain around that. What did God mean for me?
And what type of changes did you make in your lifestyle from that?
From Overeaters Anonymous, when I finally got ready to change, at that point, my binging had become a regular habit. I would get home from work, waitressing, I would stay up, probably 2 hours eating on the computer. And it was getting to points where I would be lying on the bathroom floor crying. But I would be in such pain, and I finally just got, like they say in program, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I remember one night specifically, I went out with my brother and I said, tonight I'm not getting dessert, And then I was like, no, I'm going to get dessert. I'm going to have one bite of it and I'm not going to eat anymore. And I was able to do that. But in my mind, I couldn't stop. I was obsessing over that. So that's when I knew, that's it. I can't control it myself.
So
I need to get help.
Did you have to eliminate sugars? Or?
Yep, I ended up getting a sponsor, and in Overeaters Anonymous, they encourage you to make a list of all your binge foods, your trigger foods, and to cut those out of your diet. Also, a lot of people utilize tools like a meal plan and a food plan. You write down in the morning everything you're going to eat for the rest of the day, and you commit to that. You don't eat anything off of it. So at the beginning, I wrote a list of all my binge foods, and I committed not to eat those. And then I would write my meal plan, and I would still include things
that had sugar in them.
Well, yeah, and that were on the list, because it's all about being honest and whatever I could stick to. So it's like, for snack, I had chocolate cake on there. And I would stick to that, and I would not eat more than the portion size on there. I also use
small
tools,
steps.
Right, baby steps. I also use tools like weighing and measuring my foods, my portions, because at that point I had no control over my portions or how much I would eat.
Right.
And I stuck to that for a good year and a half.
Wow.
And when I started,
congratulations.
Thank you. When I started, I hated fruits and vegetables. So a lot of my trigger and binge foods involved refined processed flour and refined processed sugar. So, and a lot of dairy. That was my main diet.
Wow, so the only thing that's really left is meat and fruits and vegetables.
Right, which I didn't eat much of. So it was hard for me to think, that was very overwhelming to think of changing my diet completely. That's why I said it was
That
like baby
must have been
steps.
tough. Yeah.
And slowly over time, I started to incorporate more fruits and vegetables. I hated vegetables at that point, like I said, so I do a lot of just like greens with grilled vegetables because I could stand the cooked foods. But the more I learned about healthy eating, the more I learned that live foods were the way to go, because they're alive. You're actually taking their living energy into your being and assimilating it, and your energy is getting bigger and stronger because of the energy that you're intaking.
So you're healthier. Well, Simona, we're almost out of time, and what I'd like to do is, do you have any advice, like if you could narrow it down to something to help people who may be in an addiction themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend 12-step program as one way to just gain even just support from a community, because it's a lot about feeling like you're the only one going through the situation, that you're isolated alone. So in those environments, there is a lot of support and a lot of love and compassion and understanding. But definitely something like a yoga practice, a meditation, connecting any way that you can spiritually, because that's really for me what it's all about, is the spiritual connection. The more now that I'm able to be connected to my inner self and my spiritual being, the less the rest of anything else can distract me or take away my peace. So, whatever that is for you, whether it's, banging on a drum, laying on a mat and meditating, all those different ways that you can connect with your inner self.
There's no one right way,
but
the important thing is to find it and to stay on it, because addictions, unfortunately, throughout America, most people are addicted to something. Now, if somebody's watching this show and would like to get in touch with you, can they do that?
Of course, yeah. My email would probably be best.
Okay.
And it's my name. It's SIMONA .Alladio, ALLADIO @gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Simona, for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's tough to share that with the world, but I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, because there is hope on the other side. I believe anything can be healed.
So, well, thank you very much. Together, we make a difference, one story at a time. If you'd like to find out more about World Wellness Education, you can join our website at worldwellnesseducation.org. Today's wellness tip is on how your perception creates your reality. Our perceptions play a huge role in our day-to-day living and in our overall health and well-being. If you believe you can do it, you can. If you believe you can't, you won't. How do you see your reflection? Is it distorted in the ripples of a wave? Is it clear as in a quiet body of water? Is it completely opposite, as in looking in at a mirror? How you see yourself in relation to your world predicts how you will behave and perform in your daily routines. For instance, if you view your body as a perfect vessel, then you will treat your body as such. You will provide your perfect body with perfect nutrition and exercise. It is when you think of yourself as less than that, you do things that sabotage yourself. How can you take care of something that you do not believe is perfectly deserving? You will create more of whatever you focus on. If you think that people around you are rude and uncaring, then that is what you will see. This is how the people in your world will behave. However, if you change your perception and believe that the people around you are caring and helpful, then that is what you will see. It's like when you get a new car. As you are driving down the road, you will see lots of cars that are the same make and model of the car you just purchased. However, you probably never noticed these cars before. It is not that they weren't there, you are just noticing them now because that is what you are focused on. There are many people these days who have stopped watching and reading the news. The reason is due to the fear and negativity that is created in these newscasts. When you focus on fear and negativity as you go to bed at night and then again first thing in the morning, is it any wonder that you will spend most of your day living in fear and negativity? Are you experiencing the same problems over and over? Instead of looking at your life the same way, why don't you try a different set of glasses? Try putting a different spin on things. What do you have to lose? Chances are your problem will become less of one and eventually will be eliminated. In order to change your life, you must change your view of yourself and your view of those around you. Start small with one person or one item that you want to perceive differently. Remember that you are changing only your perception of the situation, not the person or situation itself. For example, let's say you're stuck in traffic on the freeway. No one is moving, but you see this car coming from behind you down the right side of the road. You get mad and frustrated because this person is breaking the law. They should have to wait in traffic just like everyone else. Who do they think they are? Now, how would your perception change if you knew there was a little boy in the back seat who was bleeding profusely from his arm and may not make it to the hospital alive if his dad doesn't break the law and drive down the right side of the freeway? We often don't know why people behave the way they do. We do not know what baggage they carry around them with them day after day. However, we do know what we think and how we perceive the world. Work consistently and patiently on your belief systems. You can do this. You deserve this. This information is not meant to be medical advice. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the contents of this information. Instead, you should consult appropriate health professionals on any matter relating to your health and well-being. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can catch this show each week on Lakefront TV. And to find out more about World Wellness Education, check out our website at worldwellnesseducation.org. And we'll see you next time.
This episode of World Wellness Education is made possible by a production grant from the Milhorn Law Firm. Have you or a loved one ever suffered an injury due to the negligence of another? Then it's time to turn to a law firm that you know and trust, one with a record of client satisfaction and integrity. Hello, my name is Ryan Milhorn, and the Milhorn Law Firm has been representing personal injury clients in the Central Florida area for over 20 years. Our attorneys live in this community and are very proud to call it home. The Milhorn Law Firm, the law firm you know and trust.